Welcome
Awesome.
to our third episode of Not So Starving Artists. Today we have Ocean. Is it okay if I call you Ocean, or would you prefer?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. So, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really, really excited to have you. Do you want to just like give a little bit of an introduction about yourself to people who may not know who you are?
Okay. My name is Ocean, or my actual name is Oshani, and I am a dancer. I grew up in Brampton, and I now live in Toronto. I've been living in Toronto for the last 7 years. Um, I started in the commercial choreography industry, but then 2 years of training downtown, I auditioned for Footnotes, and I've been like an avid like street dancer and just like learning foundation and being in the battle scene and in the community, and I really like it. um, Also, yeah, pretty much that's it. I'm a part of a crew called House of Honeys. I co-created the crew 2 years ago, and I've been a part of Footnotes since 2014.
Hey, that is a good amount of time at this point. 6 years going on now.
Yeah,
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 that's
going on 6.
uh,
Long time.
yeah. Also weird to think about where the world was in 2014 and where it is now. Definitely
Yeah,
unexpected to say.
totally different. And it's like a hard thing to predict as well. Like, who would have thought 2020 would have looked like this? Or who would have thought I've been doing street dance? Like, every time I think about my dance career, I'm like, how did I end up here? But I love it. So,
I mean, that's all that really matters, right? As long as you love what you're doing. So, usually we would introduce the food that we have, but we are still waiting. But while we're
still
waiting,
waiting.
do you want to tell us we are going to be eating from Almond Butterfly? Do you want to tell us why you chose Almond Butterfly as your place?
Yes. Okay, so Almond Butterfly, I found it like 3 years ago. And it was this like little nook cafe tucked in Harvard on Harvard Street. And around the same time, I learned that I was gluten intolerant. So I was like changing my diet and cutting out certain things. Like I first started cutting out meat, and then I like for some reason built like an intolerance to bread and like pastas,
Mm.
which sucks because it's so good. And finally I found this cafe that does like bagels and sandwiches and muffins and cookies, and it's all gluten free. And so I've been like really loyal to them for the last 3 years because they have food that I love that I can eat without it causing too much damage.
I'm gonna I'm gonna
Oh
introduce
my
what
god, you
I
got cupcakes!
got.
Oh, my heart.
I've got I think this is a mocha. It has espresso on the top.
Yeah, that one's really good.
And a funfetti one. So I will not eat them yet because I will wait for you.
Oh, yay, cool. They're
But
so good.
just to give a little sneak preview of what's going to be happening. All right, so let's start off with House of Honeys. In Toronto, in the street dance community, a all-female group is rare, to say the least. What
Hmm.
prompted you to start or co-create House of Honeys?
House of Honeys, the start of House of Honeys is really interesting in the sense that, like, when you look at a dance crew, it almost like is birthed out of like a bunch of kids who went to school together, which is not the case for us. Or maybe it is because we are all a part of Footnotes Academy, but we never had like any intention of actually starting like this all girls crew. We were like, it was after training at Footnotes one day, and we're like, yo, let's hang out, let's like watch a movie. And we like put the movie on, we push pause because we're having a conversation. This conversation happened to be about all the goals and all the stuff that we wanted to do. And like, it was closer to the beginning of the year around February. And so, like, you're sort of in like that goal setting mindset at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Uh, and we're all just like, yo, like, let's do this, I want to do this. And the conversation sort of sat in, we always talk about doing these things but we're never able to actually follow through. and how do we hold each other accountable for that?
Mhm.
And so we're like, well, why don't we just do it together? Like, let's create goals and let's actually do it together. There's something so powerful about being a woman and 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 working together to create some like noise. And I think one of the hardest parts of being in this industry is that you're a woman,
Mhm.
and it's challenging and it's intimidating, you know. And so I think we all sort of share the same feelings or insecurities of being a woman and having to be so loud in order to create a name for yourself or to market yourself. And so it sort of started with an idea like that. And we had the house that we lived in at the time, Holly, Kian, and I were living together. We called everyone a honey. Like if they did something really sweet, or if they were just like all dolled up or they're dressed up, we were like, yo, you're such a honey, you're a honey, you're a honey. And one day we had a party and we invited like a bunch of people. I think it was like closer towards the end of the year where like people are away from home from their families. So we like invite all our friends. Um, and we called our house the House of Honey. It's like the party. And so when we create, and that was like the year before. So it was like the universe was like setting this up. Uh, and then like a few months later, we're like, oh, why don't we just call it the House of Honeys? Because it was like a name that was floating around. But then at the same time, we weren't like, oh, this is going to turn into anything. It just happened organically, which was really cool.
That's really cool. And I love that, like, I love what you're saying about the fact that, like, it's so important because we are women to, like, make noise.
Hmm.
And, like, I feel like that's really cool, especially having, like, an all female street crew. And also, I love that origin story. That's, like, the best way to come up with a name, like, ever.
Right, right, right.
So,
Um,
oh, yeah.
oh, I just want to say, like, there are so many B girls, there are so many female street dancers. I think that because of the street dance culture and it being like so loving and chill, like there's not as much like limelight there. Whereas like in the commercial industry, it's like all limelight. So, but there are so many incredible female dancers. It's like very inspiring.
So last year, you choreographed your first dance video featuring the ladies from House of Honeys. You want to talk about that? Because I watched it, I thought it was amazing. You want to talk about that experience, how you came up with it, how the filming went?
Yes, thank you, thank you. My mentor Pyro, who's like the king of all concept videos, he like sort of like planted the seed in my head about like doing something more like I was dancing a lot, and at the time I had like a lot of really cool ideas, but the courage to actually do something with it was like not in the cards. But he was like, yo, like you should just do it, you know, like just get it done. I think a conversation with him about that really helped. And then I was like, I'm gonna do it. As simple as that. Um, and I came up with like an idea that I felt like would be easy to execute, but at the same time, something that made a lot of sense in terms of like being a woman and like girl gang and like street culture, fashion, like something that I could like really bring to life. And it sort of like sat in that. I don't know, I love Janet Jackson. And from there, the creating process was, I think, easier because it was more exciting to create. I was like, oh, this is so cool, this is so cool, this is so cool. I think I got nervous when it came to like reaching out to House of Honeys, who are all incredible dancers, to be like, hey guys, I have this idea. I wanted to use you guys to bring it to life. That like in itself, I never thought how like scary or intimidating that would be, but it's totally intimidating. But and then to like host rehearsals, so like to be like dancer to choreographer or dancer to director is like totally different, you know. Yeah, so I think like that was like my lesson in that moment. Like, is this a space that you could hold, and like can you get your idea across, and like can you teach them to bring it to life? Like how can you command that? And I really enjoyed it. I had so I had so much fun. It was scary. It was scary at first, but then now I think that it would be something I would do often and take seriously, and maybe pursue a career that explores that side of creating as opposed to just being a dancer.
No, that's amazing. And you focus on locking, right?
Yes.
So did you find any difficulties when like incorporating other aspects of street dance, street style into your choreography when like you're so like focused on one like funk style?
hmm I think, being a part of Footnotes, we train a bunch of different styles.
Mhm.
And then I've also like taken it upon myself to like discover or explore like different teachers who train different styles. My focus is locking because I have a connection to it. And so I like enter battles, or I like post locking videos or cipher locking. I'm like really comfortable, but I do know other styles. So I think it's more so of a challenge to incorporate locking because I think it's really underrated.
Oh,
And yeah, and I don't know, like I really enjoy it, and I've gotten like cool feedback like, wow, you make locking look so cool because it's like really quirky,
mhm.
and I find like in this 2020 era, like locking's not really used. So I find like it being more of a challenge to use locking,
Mhm.
and to get people to appreciate how cool it is, as opposed to like using other styles.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely see that. I definitely see I feel like back maybe in like the 90s, there were, there was like locking was a thing, and because I grew up like I was born early 90s, so I grew up in like late 90s, and like hip hop culture was so commercialized, so like I saw a lot of it, and then the 2000s came and I was like, I don't see funk styles anymore. Like I see a lot of hip hop, and I see a lot of I see a lot of what we used to call urban, but I don't see any like OG funk style. So I love the fact that like you're trying to incorporate that. And I also
Mhm.
love that your focus is locking because I love locking. Like I think it's just so fun. Like it's just so fun to watch. Like I'm happy when I watch it. You know what I mean?
That's how I feel when I do it. I'm like, oh my God, this feels so good. I find like a lot of people have that experience too. Like before even trying it, they're like, oh, I don't know. But then they try and they're like, oh, that was really fun.
It's fun. So you filmed at Underground Pass Park. What was the inspiration for filming there?
I think I was trying to capture like girls hanging out at a park,
Mhm.
and that's like the perfect idea of like, oh, okay, like there are guys there, there are girls there, oh, like let's check each other out. Really, you're just like hanging out with your friends. But you know, when you're hanging out with your friends and you're like, who else is here, who can be entertained, like I think that the underpass has so much culture there, and that brings people together.
That's really cool, and I love that location. Like visually, it's stunning. It's like a
Stunning.
So this is like kind of a more general question, but what is your favorite part? If there could even be a favorite part, but what is your favorite part about being on House of Honeys?
I would have to say that my favorite part about being a part of the House of Honeys is our rehearsals. And I say our rehearsals because we get to spend a decent amount of time together. And in those hours, we laugh so much. It's insane. I like literally, they just like know exactly what button to push to get me like rolling on the floor. They're all so funny. Now when we hang out, the majority of the time we spend laughing, just like literally cackling. And I think like just being around such like positive light energy is brings me so much joy.
Mhm.
Whenever I think about the honeys, I think about how much of a good time that I have. And that's dancing and not dancing. That's like what family's about. So, and they always have my back. They always do. It's really cool.
That's actually so touching. But are your rehearsals productive then?
Yeah, no. Our rehearsals are 0% productive. It's hilarious because we always comment about how like we can't get anything done. We can't get anything done. We just like spend too much time joking around. But then when we like get in our bag, like our creative bag, it's like everyone's so talented and in such a different way that when we start creating, it's like entering a different world. You know, like someone has an idea that leads into another idea that leads into another idea. It sort of creates this like this magic swirl of great ideas, and that gets us really excited and focused because
Mhm.
you just want to continue creating. So there are some good times, there are some really good moments. And yeah, there are some really good moments, but yeah, rehearsals can be tough when they're all your friends.
What's the last like really good moment that you feel comfortable sharing?
You know what comes to mind? This is so silly. I have to warn you in advance how silly this is. But whenever I think about our rehearsals, or like we had a rehearsal, we were preparing for, I can't even remember what we were preparing for. It must have been Kayla Falloon's show. And we are at the underground, and like we'll try a move. Sometimes the moves don't always work, but when we fall out of it, we'll like, it'll be really dramatic. Or we'll try a move and it'll look nuts. And so we tried to move and it looked like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And so we started like running around for like 30 minutes being Tyrannosaurus Rex. Literally for 30 minutes, I've never laughed so hard in my life. And it was from like trying a dance move. So like things like that. Also, our last show at that we did was Her, and that was more emotional. And we're like really not showy, but like we like to showcase like all of the different styles that we have. And this time it was more so about telling a story. And that was really cool to be able to share something very real, something that was happening to us in our art form. That was another really cool experience more recently.
So you mentioned that you are a part of Footnotes. You've been training there since 2014, and now you are Footnotes Elite. So
Yes.
what value you feel like you've gotten from training at slash with Footnotes?
When I joined Footnotes, I initially joined because I started in the choreography industry and I didn't have any foundation. And it was starting to really affect my work. I was like, or like even like my experience dancing, I'm like, there's a lot that I'm not getting. So that's why I ended up joining Footnotes. And then it opened my world to like the street dance culture, what it's about, what the community is about, what dance art individuality is about. And that's something that I've learned, acquired, and I'm still learning till today. Outside of individuality and being your own artist, it's really helped me discover my own voice, something that I didn't have before. Um, it gave me a certain level of confidence that I'm still working on. And it's really like allowed me to be proud of what I have to offer or contribute. And I think like being in this industry, when you start to like enter like the vulnerability aspect of this craft, it gets like really scary. And it's easier to be like, okay, tell me what to do, you know, and how do I look exactly like somebody else? I think though, even in the choreography or commercial industry and looking like everybody else, there's a certain level of artistry, of individuality that you add to someone else's vision that makes you stand out, and that makes you exceptional, undeniable, and changes your experience in that world. And I think that I learned how to uncover that in this like street dance freestyle world. I have so much to thank to Footnotes for that. They literally taught me how to trust myself and explore my own artistry, my own individuality in that way. It was a process, let me tell you.
Oh yeah, finding your own individuality and your own like creative aesthetic and things that make you happy is so difficult. Mhm.
Totally. It's really hard. And it's like hard in the sense of like discovering it, but also like in showing up for it,
Mhm.
you know, like and every single time showing up for it, it's a challenge. But like once you like, oh, there's like this thing, I call it like the magic bliss moment. And it's like falling into a trance of just trusting the music, trusting yourself. It's really hard to like flip the switch and just be there. Like you have to trust yourself so much to be like, I'm going to freestyle to this music and everything's going to look choreographed and perfect, you know. But really, it becomes more of a spiritual experience where
Mhm.
you're trusting music that's already there, and you're trusting dance that is already there, and you're allowing the universe to sort of like take you.
Mhm.
It's really cool. And I have like footnotes in the street dance culture to allow me to get to that place and then also bring it with me whenever I do commercial stuff.
But moving on, like moving back a little bit, talking about footnotes. So footnotes um, really emphasizes like respecting the sources of street dance and respecting the history and respecting the culture. How do you feel between the rest of the community? Because it looks like the rest of the community has like recently started to kind of catch up to what footnotes has already been doing since time. How do you feel about like the kind of culture shift that we are going through right now when it comes to the history of dance, street dance specifically?
I think it's amazing. I think perhaps change is overwhelming and sometimes it doesn't seem like it's the right thing, but change is necessary. I think that this change, especially knowing your history and what or where dance has evolved from, is important in terms of the where dance is going. I think that there is enough abundance of this art and art in period for everybody to be able to have and to explore. I think that it shouldn't be subjected to a certain group. I think everyone should experience it. I think that that is how it was created as well. It was in a space where all could be attached to this dance in a respectful way, of course, that honors where it comes from and why it exists. And how do you do that without learning
Mhm.
learning where it's coming from? So it's important. It's so important.
But in that space, especially because you mentioned like it's something that people should have access to, how do you feel about the prevalence of now like um, studio culture? Because street dance was originally a social dance between low income Black and Brown communities, but especially
Mhm.
in GTA, Toronto, we've seen an abundance of like now studio culture. So what are your feelings around that?
I think it's obviously a different time, you know, like I'm sure 2 decades ago there were studios, but not nearly as much studios as there are now. I think that the the purpose of studios were rooted in expanding the art form and in the expansion of dance. I think they lost a lot of things along the way, but I don't think that studios are bad. They just need the right format. And sometimes things take a while for the right format to be the perfect format, you know? And like the most we could do is have a conversation and ensure that hip hop in studios is represented the right way, or street dance in studios is represented the right way, just like ballet,
Hmm.
as opposed to guessing what it should be like, or taking the element of the street dance out of it. So right now I teach in studios, and for me to get the idea that this is a street culture, it's a social dance, I have to like create that atmosphere within my classroom. And I think it's totally doable to be able to achieve that. Also, like, I think it's important for studios to incorporate the street dance element, not just like by recreating, but like involving them in the community. So there are like events that they can invite their students to. And there are a few teachers who do that, who like bring their students or kids to like a popping jam or to a locking jam. Like, it's not closed off to people who go to the studios. Like last year, I teach at Vibe Dance, and I brought all my kids to a popping jam at the underground. You know, it's totally doable, even though we're in a studio. You know, like it's not just you're dancing in a studio and that's it.
Yeah. How would you suggest that like teachers or people who really want to implement this kind of structure at studios do so right now in like COVID times?
I think I the type of personality I have is that I love history and I love storytelling. And I think it also changed my relationship with the dance. So especially when you hear it from because the dance culture is still fairly new. So the originators of certain styles are still around. And so to hear them be like, yeah, I was like at a cafe and Don Campbell Lock was there like trying to get down. And they're telling me that they saw Don Campbell Lock. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. 1 second.
Hey, we got
Yay!
food. Let's do a quick detour so now we can dig into this.
Yes, let's do that. Oh yeah, love this stuff. Thank you so much for this, by the way.
What have you got?
So what we have here is a vegan bagel. Um,
Oh,
can you see? Oh yeah,
oh, that looks so
yeah.
good.
And all of it is gluten free, and it doesn't, for me personally, it doesn't taste like that at all. It tastes like a really delicious bagel. And then we got like pesto, avocado, and then Daya cheese and tomato.
Okay, that's so okay. Let's do like a little mini cheers and then we can dig in.
Yeah.
Great. Cheers.
Woo.
Oh my God.
Mhm.
Oh my God. I was not expecting, I'm not gonna lie, when I saw I was like, oh, it's vegan and like gluten free. I think this one is vegan, but I was like expecting it to taste vegan and gluten free. And this does not. Oh my God. I'm also eating my cupcake with a fork. Don't judge me, please.
I do that all the time.
But oh my God. And also, this is vegan.
Yeah.
This icing is vegan? Excuse me?
Yep.
Buttercream. Oh my God.
Crazy.
We're gonna move on to like a little bit more of a like low-key serious topic. We're just talking about, the kind of like culture shift and like the studio, like choreography, culture, and obviously street culture. And like anybody who's in the community knows that we have recently moved away from the term urban dancing. So like how do you feel about this move that's been made like literally within the past few months?
Mm. I think it's important. It shows that people are speaking up, they're using their voice, and that they're not appropriating the culture and trying to claim it for something that it's not. I think it brings a lot of like authenticity to the dance when you call it by the.
My phone overheated and shut off
Oh,
because of the sun. I'm so sorry about that.
oh, that's okay.
On a very serious topic.
I know we were like in the middle of like important wisdom, and I was like, oh no, we lost you. Yeah, so we cut away at you're talking about the appropriation, and then you started cutting out.
Oh yeah, I think that when we don't use the right terminology, it begins to fall into that category of they carry more than just defining a scenario and more so tells a story. If we describe dance with urban dance, then what story would we be carrying with that? Whereas if we call it by what it is, street dance, there's so much history in that. You know, we get to honor so many people who have contributed to street dance if we call it by its name. Popping. Why doesn't popping deserve a name, or locking? It also deserves a name. And that can like fall into so many other categories. Like when we start talking about people, you know, do they not deserve their birthright? It's the same thing, you know, less shortcuts and more honoring.
Yeah, I totally agree. I like 100% think that like it's not that much more difficult to call it popping or locking, or even say that there's inspiration from, you know, funk styles, and it's just my own choreography but within like these inspirations.
Totally.
Yeah, so I like that we're moving in that direction. But speaking of choreography, what are your opinions on the space between choreography and freestyle? Because you did mention that like you came from choreography and then through footnotes you started like understanding freestyle and battling, and obviously those are two completely different cultures.
I think that choreo is like could be open to anybody. Like I've seen a lot of choreographed street dance styles. I think the difference really sits in like commercial and freestyle, or like commercial and street dance. Because street dance sits in like a social element. So like you experience those styles like at a party, at a jam, at a battle. It's like really socially driven, whereas commercial dances for a show, for like a concert, for something that like something produced, like a production. And because it's a production, they need choreo that it's necessary. So maybe understanding like, okay, like I need to learn choreo for productions, for TV, for film, for concerts, because choreography thrives here. Whereas like in the street dance community, it's so free, it's so open, there's room for individuality. So understanding that freestyle is important in that atmosphere. I think though that your individuality helps you shine in the commercial industry. And so having that skill to be able to freestyle within any genre is very important for your artistry. I think choreography is really important to get a job done, but it doesn't necessarily speak to, I mean, everything is a type of art, but doesn't necessarily speak to your artistry. And that would be the difference, is understanding that this is a job and this is what I need to do for this job, choreography. This is my art, this is my artistry, this is my individuality, freestyle, you know? And, you know, like you get a bucket list for the amount of jobs that you want to do. Once you check all those off, it's done. But your artistry, your freestyle lives on forever. It's something that you can always work on. So both of them are important in its own way. But I think understanding the purpose and the use for all those things will sort of show appreciation for that in that way.
Definitely makes sense, and is definitely an important thing to kind of remember, especially that like that comment you made about the fact that like choreography is there for this job or whatever, but your artistry and freestyle, like that will go with you even when you're old and have bad knees and can't do choreography anymore.
Yes, exactly. You know, and like I think also like there are so many jobs that you can have that is rooted in freestyle as well. But having a bunch of people freestyle on stage together could look crazy. You might need to throw some choreo in there. So, but yeah.
Where would you place teams? So like the whole team culture that exists, the team competitions, things like that, where would you place that in the space between commercial and freestyle? Because it's not quite either of those.
Yeah. I think it depends on the type of team that it is and what styles of dance that they use. I think like for choreography, a lot of things are taken from dance for what you need for that job. So say you take a Fresno and a Scuba and a Bart Simpson, and you're like, these are the pieces that I need for this job specifically. But if you had a team that used all the different elements of freestyle to create their vision, I think that it could go either way, you know? And I think that depending on the team, you could show social dance in your performance. I think that's like, the honeys don't really compete in anything. Like, that's not necessarily our jam all the time, but when we do, it's never like everybody needs to look the same, and more so like, how do we bring what we know and what we love to the stage? And I think teams could do that. And I think it would just like change this dance scene.
And speaking of changing the dance scene, we're going to move into like our last kind of point of the day, is that obviously the world is going through a transition period in 2020, but a little closer to home, our community is also going through a bit of a transition now. You know, studios are like fighting to stay alive. Street dance is obviously, we can't have that social aspect when we are not able to be next to each other. So we're going through this transition. What do you want to see from community leaders during this transition so that when we make it out on the other side, we're making it out stronger and more together instead of divided?
I think that as long as we carry what we believe dance means to us with us through this transition, I think that will end up even stronger than before this pandemic.
Yeah.
So much goes into storytelling, so much goes into history. And I think that if our leaders carry that with them to, obviously we're not spending a lot of time together. So how do we recreate how dance started in the first place without sharing history, sharing the stories that are so much more than dance? You know, they almost have nothing to do with dance, but with community, with friendship, with family, with hardship. And if we carry that essence with us into our new world, I think that the dance can still live on.
Awesome. I'm gonna use some of that wisdom. Yeah, that brings us to the end of our interview today. I think that was actually a really great and like meaningful place to end off. So thank you for that. And thank you for joining me and joining us, to whoever's watching today. Yeah, I was really, really grateful. Let's end off with just one more bite of this beautiful almond butterfly, gluten-free / vegan / dairy-free place. So
yes,
you didn't get to eat that much, but oh my god, that was more collection.
so good.
So good. I'm actually in awe.
Mm.
But yeah, thank you again. I really appreciate you, and this was a blast.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. Okay, bye. Have a good day.
Bye.